there was a lot of noise around the H-1B visa issue a few months ago. It sort of died down. What is happening?
Well, tech companies are facing a couple different things right now. So big talent shortages. There's 548,000 open technology positions. You see this run up to the H-1B lottery every single year. The caps for 6 years in a row have been met within the first week. And you see the government really fostering some dialogue that is concerning around H-1Bs for tech companies.
So, given the rhetoric that we see come out of the administration, where do you think this is going?
So I can't speak to the policy aspect of it, but what I will say is that within our customer base, we're seeing a couple different things. So firstly, employees are nervous. So people are much more nervous to move to the U.S. than they've ever been. They're rethinking moves. That's challenging for companies in terms of recruiting. And that's happening day in and day out. What we're also seeing our companies do is leverage different types of filling those roles. So we're seeing a lot more short-term mobility to the U.S., so people coming for a month on a different visa type, people traveling frequently, as they really try to figure out where the policy is going.
David, you know, a lot of issues at play here, and of course, many of these foreign workers are really part of the backbone of Silicon Valley and the tech industry. You know, what do you make of the fact that, you know, every year, very quickly, all of these visas are gone?
Well, it's connected to what Mark Cuban said on the show earlier, that we have a government that really doesn't seem to appreciate the degree to which we live in a technologized economy, and the policies that we tend to adopt at a national level are not really appropriate for the nature of where we are. And certainly the fact that we would have so many openings in tech-related jobs, as Brynne just mentioned, and we have a minuscule number of people we're allowing into the United States, combined with the fact that we don't have appropriate education and training to create the new core of trained tech-centric workers that we need, it's just like shooting ourselves in the foot as a country.
Now, you know, I'm very interested in the diversity issues in the tech industry, and someone suggested to me that perhaps the government could award H-1B visas on a gender-balanced basis. And, you know, as I understand it, most of these visas are awarded to men. What do you make of this idea that perhaps the U.S. could dole them out equally, and that could help combat the gender diversity issues in Silicon Valley?
Yeah, well, it's definitely an issue. We all know that there's huge gender imbalances in the Valley, and there's definitely a pipeline issue. I'll take it a little bit more broadly. So I think across the world, there are less women who are mobile than men in jobs. About 20% of mobile employees at a typical multinational are female versus male. And we know that there's some unconscious bias that goes into selecting women to take a work opportunity in a different location. You know, quite frankly, employers often assume that a woman isn't going to want to take that career step or isn't going to want to move because of family reasons. And so I would encourage companies to actually be the starter of that and encourage their female employees to take mobility opportunities. We know that there is a direct link between mobility and leadership, and that it's a way to make your leadership pipeline much more diverse by moving more women into mobility opportunities.
So obviously it's impossible to predict the policy implications here, but how do you see what we're seeing right now, and I know this is a short term, impacting the talent flow into Silicon Valley over the longer term?
So I think that it's going to affect it. I mean, I think that people feel a different tone coming out of the U.S. I think that they're looking at other markets. You know, I lived in London for 7 years, and we saw similar dynamics happening in the U.K. Our engineering team, we have a lot of it in London, and at a time it was 70% non-UK nationals. What we saw as a corollary in the UK was we saw our pipeline of applications from outside of the UK plummet pretty dramatically overnight when Brexit happened. So I have a concern that there will be a similar effect happening here in the Valley of people wanting to come, people applying for jobs, and that could be crippling for the technology industry.